In this episode, Tom and Andrew visit with Loretta Hidalgo Whitesides, the Eclipse Evangelist. This is Tom Fox back for another episode of the Night Sky, a podcast about the eclipses coming to Kerrville. Today, we're thrilled to have Loretta Hidalgo Whitesides. Andrew and I met her this past week when she was on the lead, and we asked her if she would come tell her story for this podcast, and she graciously agreed. Loretta, first of all, thank you so much for visiting with us today.
My pleasure.
We are almost 1 year out from the first of two eclipses. So, what is your role in the eclipse? How are you evangelizing it, and what brought you to Kerrville?
I love eclipses. I got to have the privilege of seeing my first eclipse back in 2001 in Zambia in Africa, and it was just amazing and just had me in tears. It was so beautiful. I was so overwhelmed. It was an incredible experience, and so I got hooked and knew that the one was coming to the United States in 2017. So I went to that one and then started looking at where are we going to go in 2024. And having lived in Houston when I worked at NASA Johnson Space Center right out of school, I was looking at Texas because that seemed like a good place for space people to go. And I saw that right where the center line crossed Interstate 10, which is where we come out from California, is Kerrville. I thought, Kerrville? That's where Julie lives. And so I was excited because I actually had a connection to Kerrville. So one of my childhood friends, Julie Strachey, we went to summer camp together when we were teenagers, and we still go to summer camp together. She drives out from Kerrville to California every summer to be with us. And my whole camp we all drove to our other friend's house in Oregon for the 2017 eclipse. And then because she was on the center line in Oregon. And then we all found out that our other camp friend, Julie's on the center line in 2024. So it's just a whole camp weekend all the way around.
Could I ask you to step back and tell us about your academic background, where you grew up, and what you did professionally before we get into your current gigs?
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Sonoma County, so Northern California, about an hour north of San Francisco, with redwood trees and wine country. And went to Stanford, I was an astrobiologist looking at how do we grow plants in space. Like Mark Watney in The Martian, I got to grow my potatoes on Mars. And went to Johnson Space Center after school, and then working with medical astronauts and on space station hardware evaluations, and then went back to California and working at NASA Ames, and then on to Caltech to start some graduate school work in astrobiology.
And what brought you to Kerrville for this trip?
This trip, we're coming up. This is the T-minus 1 year mark, April 8th. And I wanted to be here. I wanted to be boots on the ground and meeting people and getting the city excited because there's a lot of messaging out there. Oh, it's apocalyptic, the traffic and everything's going to be terrible. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. No, this is going to be amazing. This is going to be life-changing. This is going to be awe-inspiring. This is going to be one of the most powerful days of your life. And it's nothing to be afraid of. It's something to be excited about and looking forward to and inviting all your friends and family for.
Andrew?
Okay, so you might have already covered this, but maybe expand just a little bit on what's the most exciting aspect of this event from your perspective.
Yeah,
Wait.
and people don't talk about
He's not recording.
Yes, I am.
Here. Okay.
Edit. You can edit that. Okay. You're good. Go ahead.
The most exciting part of the eclipse is the experience. It's a very human experience. You'll hear a lot about the danger. You'll hear a lot about the science. But what I'm really excited to talk about, what I love to talk about, why I'm here, why I call myself an evangelist, is because I love to share with people how magical it is. So you'll be looking up at the sky, and it takes about an hour for the moon to totally cover the sun. So it's this, you've seen, and we've all seen partial eclipses before because that happened recently with the glasses. You saw the light out of the sun. But what's totally different about being in this 100-mile ribbon in the middle of the United States, being in where the circular shadow of the moon is going to pass over us, and Kerrville will be right in the middle of that circle. Yeah. So that's why we get the most time in the shadow, is when the moon clicks into place, it'll go dark. And it'll be 1:30 in the afternoon, and the sky is just going to go dark like it's nighttime. And the stars are going to come out an hour past sunset. It'll look like sunset in every direction. It'll be a setting sun colors. And The animals be confused. They'll go back. The cows might go back to the barn, and the birds settle down for the night. And what's interesting is that we'll actually be like overwhelmed. Our senses. The light is so different. The light is like nothing you've ever seen before. It's so eerie. It's so different. It's so novel. It's so unique. It's so magical that you're so present. And like everything yesterday goes away, everything tomorrow goes away, and you're just here in this moment. And that's actually what makes any moment magical, is just being fully present. And that's what the eclipse will do. It'll have you be right there, overwhelmed. And I actually for me, I say it's the closest you can get to being in space with your feet still on the ground. I feel like these discs that I mostly just ignore suddenly get transformed into these massive celestial spheres. And I'm out in the solar system watching them align in the heavens. And I actually had a 9-year-old say to me, or say to his mom, wow, I never realized how small I am. And so that's that idea of like getting our place in the cosmos.
I think you described those kind of moments in your book as World 2.
Yes.
Being present and where time stops and everything just seems to, like, you're only focused on what's happening right in front of you. So it's pretty powerful to hear you talk about that. So I have one other question about how does the space community and your connections within the space community, the people you know, how are they responding to this event? Because obviously you're really excited about it. You're here in Kerrville. You're talking to us about it. But how do maybe some of your peers or colleagues in that community responding to that event?
Oh, everyone's super excited about this. They're like, oh, where do we go to watch this eclipse, Loretta? And I'm like, Kerrville, that's where you go. And it's incredible because we have Jeff Bezos's Blue Origin space company is in Texas and in West Texas and Van Horn. And so their closest center line is Kerrville. And Elon Musk has his SpaceX folks down in Boca Chica, and their closest center line is Kerrville. And NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, their closest center line is Kerrville. So I'm really just been encouraging the whole community to come out to the Hill Country and join us to watch this eclipse all together. So we've got Bill Nye coming, and I'm telling all the astronauts they got to be out here or somewhere, at least somewhere on the center line.
Golly, Bill Nye, that is extremely sentimental for me because I grew up watching him. I was of that era. That was great. Awesome. Tom, over to you, sir.
So I heard you talk about the Oregon eclipse. I heard you talk about the Zambia eclipse. Was there one in between?
There was one after the Idaho eclipse. That's where we were, was Idaho. Most recently, there was an eclipse in Antarctica. And I really wanted to go to that. I thought, oh my gosh, an eclipse in Antarctica. I could kill 2 birds with 1 stone. This would be so cool. And we moved heaven and earth and got lined up childcare and got flights to the southern tip of South America. And we were going to get on a boat and go down to see this in Antarctica. And we're all loaded up, got all our gear packed. We're ready to get on the boat. And it was a year and a half ago. And they were just, we just got to do a quick COVID test before you get on board. And of all hundreds of people who are boarding the ship, they pulled me out of line and they're like, maybe we'll just do another test just to be safe. And I had COVID. So I missed the boat.
So tell us about, is each eclipse different? And was Zambia different than Oregon? Do you experience the same, do you feel the same things? Could you really maybe help us understand what you felt?
Such a great question, because the Zambia eclipse blew my mind. It was so powerful and so amazing. And in 2017, I was watching it and I thought to myself, it doesn't feel as dark as Zambia. That's weird. And so I just noticed that. And I went back and looked and started studying and learning more about eclipses. And I realized that eclipses vary, not just in the amount of time, but in the position of the moon. So our moon doesn't orbit in a perfect circle around the sun. It's an ellipse, like an oval. And so sometimes it's farther away and sometimes it's closer. And when the moon is in front of the sun, it matters for that particular eclipse. So in 2017, the moon was a little bit farther away from the Earth than it was in Zambia. It was 103% coverage. We'll have the annular eclipse in October. That's when the moon is definitely too far away. It doesn't even cover the sun all the way. So it leaves this ring of sun around the edge, a ring of fire, and that'll be our annular practice eclipse in October. But in 2017, it was a little bit closer, so it covered 103% of the sun. So it's close enough to cover the whole thing and then 3% more. This eclipse we're getting next year in Kerrville will match more what I saw in Africa. It's going to cover 105% of the sun. So it's going to be even closer to us and blocking more of the light. So I think it's going to get darker. And I know it's going to be longer because in 2017, we got about 2 minutes and 17 seconds in Idaho, and where we were relative to the center line. And the maximum was like 2 minutes and 27 seconds of anyone, anywhere. And here in Kerrville, we're going to get 4 minutes and 27 seconds. So we're going to get almost double or 2 minutes more than we got in 2017. So if you know anyone who traveled to see it in 2017, you'd be like, oh, I know, but this one's going to be even better. You got to come.
I assume there was some point in your life where you fell in love with the stars. Our first guest on this podcast series is an astrophysicist, and he talked about an 8-year-old boy whose teacher talked about the moons of Jupiter, and from that moment, he was looking into the sky. And my parents are school teachers, so I'm always intrigued by teaching and teachers. How can teachers and schools use this event to really excite a new generation of astrophysicists, astronauts, or anyone who wants to be in that community to really lead us into the middle and late 21st century?
That is such a beautiful question, Tom. I love it. Yeah, I think a lot of these things happen in our formative years. I know I went to Kennedy Space Center. I don't even remember going to Kennedy Space Center when I was 5 years old, but there's a picture of me sitting in the lunar rover, just beaming ear to ear with holding all my space books that we just got at the gift shop, and clearly had a big impact on me. And I remember, in kindergarten, I have memories of the teacher putting an astronaut up on the bulletin board, a cutout, and if we could get all our letters correct in kindergarten, we would get our school picture put in the faceplate of the astronaut. And I just remember being like, oh, I want my picture in that astronaut suit so bad. And so I was like practicing my letters and stuff. So I think these young people are ripe and ready to be inspired by the cosmos. I know at our summer camp where I met Julie Strachey, that's where I fell in love with the stars and saw the Milky Way, and had somebody teach me the constellations and where Vega is, and Delphinus is like the dolphin. Just magical stuff. The teachers I'm really excited about getting engaged with the schools in this area and getting the young people excited and making sure they are equipped so that they can teach their parents what they need to be doing for this eclipse and wow them with their knowledge. I want to make some really fun presentations and videos that appeal to that age group, that they can get their head around. I just got some good ideas. Some YouTubers we need to get help from, because they're really good at making science accessible and fun. And getting these young people engaged and excited about what's possible.
Andrew?
Okay, so let's see if I can tie these two dots together. So keeping with that same line of thought, your book, which by the way, I mentioned it a second ago, but it's called The New Right Stuff, Using Space to Bring Out the Best in You. How do you think this event could unite us as a community or bring out the best in us as a community here in Kerrville?
This is like my third or fourth trip to Kerrville in the last year, because this is it so bowls me over, this opportunity. And it's not lost on me how poignant this is. If you stop and think about it, next April, our country is going to be in the middle of a presidential campaign, primary season, predictably going to be contentious. And one of the things I love about space, one of the things I love about the sky is that it unites us and it reminds us our place and of the bigger picture and what we're doing this for. And so I think there's a real opportunity, especially with so many visitors coming from all over the world, all over the country, all over to here, to the heartland. There's a great opportunity for human connection and healing. I got an opportunity at the library, at the city's kickoff on Saturday, to meet local gentlemen, and he asked me if we could talk politics, and I said, I'm from California, so if that's okay with you, I'm down. And we had a really beautiful conversation, and we got to meet somebody from outside our bubble and find out that they weren't so scary, and that we both really agreed on that we want the best for the future and for our country and for our kids. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to heal on that level. And there's also a lot of opportunities to heal on the personal level, mending fences with some neighbors, reaching out to family members that you might be estranged from and be like, I'm sorry I said all that stuff years ago. I was stupid, but there's this eclipse coming and I'd love for you to come if you can. It's out of our comfort zones and it's hard and it's uncomfortable, but forgiveness is powerful and healing. And if we could do that, don't wait for a medical diagnosis or a car accident or a hurricane to get you to do stuff that you could do now.
Tom?
I want to ask you about your leadership training, Space Kind. But I have to start with this first question. It begins on May 4th. That cannot be a coincidence.
Oh heavens, no.
Tell us what May 4th is and why you're starting your training on May 4th.
Absolutely. May the 4th is Star Wars Day because it's a pun on May the 4th be with you. The 4th of May. We decided, I started Space Con training during COVID. It was right when we first started our first lockdown in 2020. And by May, I was like, oh, we need to do this to help all our people in lockdown. Let's make our Zoom calls a little more interesting. And so our Zoom calls are always a lot of fun. So people are really vulnerable and authentic, and we let our hair down and we share what we're really struggling with. And people go on this hero's journey together. We colloquially call it Jedi training because we follow that hero's journey just like they do in the movies Star Wars and in many movies, of course. And it's a powerful opportunity to meet other people and connect at a deeper level and use your passion for the future and usually our future in space, because we're all space people, to do these tough things that we've been putting off, we put on the back burner that nobody gives you a deadline to do, but could just save your life.
And tell us about Yuri's Night.
Yeah, so amazingly, April 8th this year is also Yuri's Night.
Really close.
So yeah, it's amazing to choose to be in Kerrville when I have my biggest event of the year on Saturday. So I hosted Yuri's. So I started the annual space holiday called Yuri's Night, and it celebrates the anniversary of the first human to go into space, Yuri Gagarin, and the anniversary of the first space shuttle flight, which both took place on April 12th, 20 years apart, 1961 and 1981. And when I found that out, when I got to Johnson Space Center, I thought, oh my God, what a mystical coincidence, because the shuttle wasn't supposed to launch on the 10th. Shuttle was supposed to launch on the 12th. It was supposed to launch on April 10th, and they had a software glitch, and they had to do recode some things, and they ended up launching on the 12th. But it made for this really cosmic alignment of our space anniversaries. So at Yuri's Night, we used that as an opportunity to celebrate the power of space to bring the world together. And in the 90s, when I was working at Johnson Space Center on the International Space Station and working with all these engineers in Texas learning Russian so they could go collaborate in Moscow. And it was just a beautiful time because I grew up in the height of the Cold War and worried about nuclear weapons falling on our house, and seeing how far we'd come and how space had helped make that happen was something we wanted to celebrate and help continue. So we throw a big party under the space shuttle in LA and under the space shuttle in Florida this Saturday and next Saturday, or the 8th and the 15th of April. And we're going to have astronauts there like Jessica Watkins, who's an Artemis astronaut. She just got back from 170 days on the International Space Station. And other astronauts, as well as television personalities like Walter Koenig, who played Lieutenant Chekhov from the original Star Trek series, and Gates McFadden, who was Dr. Crusher on the Next Generation, and other actors from The Expanse and Orville and Space Force and all our favorite shows. And JPL will be there with the Mars helicopter, and we'll have meteorites you can hold and DJs, and build a dance under the shuttle till midnight. So that's what we usually do on April 8th every year. But I've already warned the whole space community that we're not doing events. We're not doing an event under the shuttle next year. Everyone's coming to Kerrville, so they are already under notice that we're revectoring to Texas next year.
That's exciting. I think that's the end of my line of questioning. Do you want to talk about maybe your upcoming journey that's in the works from Virgin Galactic?
Oh yeah, it's so much going on. I forget. Oh, I forgot. I'm going to space.
That part.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, so in 2005, my then boyfriend and I bought tickets to fly on Virgin Galactic, and now we've been married for 15 years, and Super excited because looks like looks like Virgin Galactic is going to start flying our first customers this summer, which I'm really excited about. And it'll be a suborbital flight like Alan Shepard did, 1961. And so we'll go up in an airplane, we'll drop the rocket, launch up into space. So we'll get about 3.5 minutes weightlessness. We get to look out into blackness of space, see the curvature of the Earth, the really thin atmosphere, and experience the overview effect. Powerful experience of being really present
Heard about that.
and really getting your place in the cosmos. And I've been saying I can't take 50 million people with me on this space flight, but I can inspire 50 million people to all come be outside on the center line next year to see the eclipse and have the closest thing to a space flight with your feet on the ground.
That's awesome.
It's a
Tom?
great way to end this podcast.
Yeah. Thank you, Loretta, for being here. We really appreciate your time. You're super busy. So thank you for making time for us to come and speak with us and share some of your experience and outlook on the eclipse.
This is Tom Fox. Thanks so much for listening to The Night Sky, a podcast on the eclipses coming to Kerrville. If you could subscribe, rate, and review this podcast, we would greatly appreciate it, as it would help in our rankings on various podcast platforms. The Night Sky is a production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network. If you would like to talk about the eclipses, astronomy, or the night sky, please give Andrew or I a shout. This is Tom Fox. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to visiting with you again.